What's up and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today I'm bringing it back to my Christopher Nolan marathon of films with Dunkirk. I recently got word that Tenet will be released to digital next month, and here I am still behind on this marathon. Thankfully, I only had Dunkirk left to watch. That being said, this was the only movie in this entire list that I was apprehensive about rewatching. Not because it's a bad movie or anything, but because I'm not really the biggest fan of war films. There's maybe a handful of war films that I love. Two that come to mind are 1917 and Saving Private Ryan. It takes a lot for me to love a movie about war, even if it is made by Christopher Nolan. But it's time to see if this film about a terraqueous beach is any good. Let's get cracking. This review is brought to you by the word of the day, terraqueous, consisting or formed of land and water. Dunkirk provides the audience with three separate vantage points of the famous evacuation of Allied soldiers during World War II from the beaches and harbor of Dunkirk, France. One vantage point takes a week, the second vantage point takes a day, and the third takes an hour, all converging at the same spot. Perhaps the greatest thing about this movie is how it begins. You can tell within maybe the first 5 to 10 minutes that this film will, at the very least, be made incredibly well. You can see the insanely impressive cinematography right from the get-go that throws you into the past during the height of this war-stricken country. Production design likewise was also really impressive because Christopher Nolan shot this thing on the actual beach where this took place, and somehow while watching, you know this, you feel it. I was never really that familiar with the story, but I often feel like certain places around the world hold memories of the past, and that's the feeling that I get when I watch this movie. The editing also stands out due to the non-linear storytelling, which I'll get into in a minute, but even if I didn't like that doesn't really change the fact that the editing was indeed brilliantly executed. A lot of people will also point out the music and sound of the film, which was another example of Hans Zimmer's genius when it comes down to providing a film score. I agree. It really is very, very good. I probably prefer Inception or Interstellar over it, but it does stand out as immaculate, tense, and beautiful in Dunkirk as well. All of this, I repeat, all of this can be seen in the first 5 to 10 minutes, and it remains consistent throughout the runtime of the film. This movie is so well made that I often feel like it's the cousin to 1917. But something happens whenever I watch the movie. Somewhere around the halfway point, the film loses me, and that mostly has to do with the non-linear storytelling. There is no main character that stands out in the center that we can focus on from beginning to end. There are three. There are the people on the land, the people in the sea, and the people in the air. Each group of individuals are doing things at different intervals of time. The story that focuses on the people on land takes a week from beginning to end. The stuff in the sea takes a day, and the stuff in the air takes an hour. Yet they're all edited together as if they're happening at the same time. The audience kind of has to keep track in their head as to what's happening when with each of these stories, as well as remember they're not supposed to be happening simultaneously. I understood that, yet I still kind of got lost. I always come back a bit towards the climax of the film when everything collides, but the pacing of the movie, in my opinion, is a little bit wonky. I may be the only person that thinks this, but it's kind of hard for me to love an entire movie when I get so lost in the middle of the thing. A big part of that is because I'm not a huge fan of war films in general. Like I said before, there's maybe a handful of war films that I love, but it's a complete rarity. I don't love 1917 for the war bits, I love it for how well it's made, and I respect Dunkirk for the way that it's made as well, but it never approaches the level of 1917 for me. Let's go ahead and break down my final score for a second. From an unbiased technical vantage point, like I said, there's very little to hate here. Within the first few minutes of the film, you know it'll be made well regardless on if you like the story or not, and that's true. I think the pacing is a bit off because of the storytelling problems that I said it has, but there's enough in here to praise. I didn't even talk about the acting from everybody, which is spot on perfect as well. The unbiased score is 86%. That being said, my personal bias when it comes down to this movie is not as good as it could have been if the film was focusing on anything other than war. And like I said, I got lost midway throughout the movie before returning for the climax. My bias score is only 72%. When we average out the two scores together, we come to the final rating of 79%, 79 out of 100 possible stars, or a C+ letter grade. I may be a bit more harsh on this film than others, but don't forget that I absolutely respect the work put into this movie behind the scenes. I didn't care that much for the story in general. It was important though, and people shouldn't forget that this actually happened in our history. That being said, let me know your thoughts on Dunkirk in the comment section down below. Is this your favorite Christopher Nolan film to date, or would you actually place it lower on your ranked films? Let me know, and as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my review for Tenet. And until then, Peace out.
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1 critic that I go to when I need a movie pick. Thanks for joining up with us. We think